The city's busiest bus terminal pulsed with the rhythm of daily life, honking horns, hurried footsteps, and the distant echo of train whistles. Travelers moved in chaotic waves, some dragging suitcases, others clutching coffee cups as they rushed toward their destinations. Vendors called out, offering newspapers and snacks, while tired workers waited for their rides home. But today, something was different. Laughter, mocking, cruel laughter, rose above the usual sounds. Near one of the bus stands, a small group of well-dressed men stood in a loose circle, their grins wide, their voices loud. Passengers smirked, some joining in, others watching with silent approval. At the center of it all stood Marcus Hayes. He didn't laugh. He didn't react. He just stood there, gripping the steering wheel of his bus, listening. None of them realized who was watching. Marcus had worked these routes for 20 years. He knew every turn, every stop, every regular passenger who took his bus daily. He had seen people at their best and worst, had endured everything from impatient complaints to thinly veiled racism. Most days he let it roll off his back. Today it felt different. The Westbridge City Terminal was the heart of the public transit system. It served thousands of people every day, office workers, students, tourists, and those who had no other means of travel. The energy here was always buzzing, always alive. But not all passengers were the same. As Marcus pulled his bus to a stop, a group of wealthy businessmen and socialites boarded. The moment they saw him, their expressions shifted. A sneer, a chuckle, a slow, knowing glance exchanged between them. They didn't see Marcus Hayes. They saw a black man in a uniform, a worker, someone beneath them. The first man, a silver-haired executive in an expensive suit, leaned in close, smirking. "A bus driver?" he mused, his tone mocking. "That's all you aim for in life?" The others chuckled. A younger businessman, his Rolex glinting under the terminal lights, scoffed. "Bet he barely finished high school." Another shook his head, pretending to be amused. "People like you will never amount to anything." The laughter grew, not the kind shared between friends, the kind meant to cut deep. Marcus kept his expression steady. He had heard worse. But something about the air today felt charged. There was a shift. A storm was coming, and none of them saw it. Not yet. Marcus Hayes had driven this route for years. The roads, the stops, the faces of passengers, all familiar, all predictable. But today felt different. Laughter echoed through the bus. Not the kind shared between friends. Not the kind that brought warmth. This laughter was cruel. It came from a group of well-dressed men standing near the front, their grins wide, their voices loud. They weren't just talking among themselves. They were laughing at him. Marcus sat in the driver's seat, hands steady on the wheel. His face gave away nothing. This wasn't new. It wasn't even surprising. But today, something felt different. He exhaled slowly, then said, "Please take your seats." It wasn't a request. It was a command, one that should have ended the conversation. But it didn't. A silver-haired businessman scoffed. "Sit? In these dirty seats?" Laughter. Another man, younger, with a Rolex flashing under the bus lights, shook his head. "I should be in my limo right now," he muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "What the hell am I doing here?" More laughter. Passengers shifted uncomfortably. Some exchanged amused glances. Others pretended not to hear. Some chuckled. Some stayed silent. Marcus said nothing, because this was nothing new. But today felt different. Maybe it was because of her, the young black girl in the middle of the bus. She couldn't have been older than 14. Her hands clenched tightly around her backpack, her posture stiff, her wide eyes locked onto Marcus. She wasn't looking at the businessman. She was looking at him, watching, waiting. Her mother placed a gentle hand on her knee, a silent warning to stay quiet. But the girl didn't look away. She had heard the insults, felt the weight of them. She was waiting. Marcus felt it. His grip on the wheel tightened. Then, the silver-haired businessman stepped forward, his smirk never fading, his voice smooth, condescending. "Tell me, driver," he mused, "do you even own a car?" A hush fell over the bus. For just a moment, the words hung in the air. Then, laughter. loud, booming laughter. Some passengers chuckled along nervously. Others exchanged glances. Some squirmed in their seats, uncomfortable but unwilling to say anything. A woman near the back, her arms crossed tightly, muttered under her breath, "This is going too far." But no one spoke up. No one stopped it. Marcus inhaled slowly. His patience was wearing thin. He had been through this before. He had learned that men like this wanted a reaction, wanted him to snap, wanted him to lose control. He had always ignored them. But today felt different. Maybe it was the way the girl was still watching. Maybe it was the way the laughter rang in his ears, louder than usual. Or maybe, deep down, he was just tired. Tired of swallowing the insults. Tired of pretending it didn't bother him. Tired of letting them believe they were better than him. The laughter continued. The mocking voices filled the air. Then, something shifted. The weight in the air changed. A presence. Something that made people sit up a little straighter. Marcus noticed it immediately. The girl's mother noticed too, her eyes widening slightly. One by one, passengers started turning their heads. Even the businessmen, the ones who had been laughing the loudest, began to sense something was off. Marcus inhaled sharply, his pulse steady. Then the bus doors opened. A figure stepped inside. The laughter stopped. The air went still. The silver-haired businessman, the one who had asked if Marcus even owned a car, turned his head, and his smirk vanished. The group of men fell silent. Passengers whispered. A woman near the back covered her mouth. The girl's eyes widened, because standing at the entrance of the bus was Mayor Jonathan Reed, the mayor of the city. And he did not look pleased. The silence stretched. Even the hum of the bus engine seemed distant now. Marcus could feel the shift. And suddenly he knew. This was about to be a moment they'd never forget. A tense silence stretched through the bus, thick with something unspoken. The laughter had died down, but the smug grins still lingered on the faces of the wealthy businessmen. They had spent their entire lives walking through the world without consequence, and today, they thought, would be no different. Then, a chuckle. It came from a younger white woman sitting near the front. She crossed her arms, leaning slightly toward the group, her voice dripping with false amusement. "People like him just don't try hard enough," she mused, shaking her head. A few people chuckled, quietly, awkwardly. Others shifted in their seats. Some looked away. No one disagreed. Marcus inhaled deeply through his nose. He was used to it. But today was different. He let the air settle for just a moment before his voice cut through it like a blade. "Sir, if you're not going to sit down, you can get off the bus." The words landed hard. The crowd gasped. Passengers stiffened in their seats, eyes widening in shock. No one ever talked back to men like these. No one dared. The silver-haired businessman's smirk faltered, just for a second. Then amusement flickered back into his features, twisting into something cruel. He stepped forward, his polished shoes clicking against the floor, tilting his head as if studying Marcus like a curiosity. "Or what?" he taunted. "What are you going to do, driver?" The tension in the bus spiked. Passengers froze. Some reached for their phones, ready to record. Marcus met the man's gaze without flinching. The girl in the middle of the bus clenched her fists. Her mother noticed. She grabbed her daughter's hand, shaking her head firmly. "Stay out of it." The girl's lips pressed together. Marcus didn't move, didn't react. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, something unexpected. From the back of the bus, a voice. Deep, steady, loud enough to be heard by everyone. "I'd listen to him if I were you." The silver-haired businessman's smug confidence wavered. Passengers turned their heads, searching for the source of the voice. And then, a man stood up, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a crisp, charcoal gray suit. A presence. The moment he stepped forward, the air shifted. The laughter, the mockery, all of it evaporated. The silver-haired businessman blinked, clearly startled. The man, black, mid-50s, powerful, spoke again. "You're awfully comfortable running your mouth in a space where you think no one will challenge you." The businessman's jaw tightened. "Who the hell are you?" The man reached into his pocket, pulled out a leather wallet, and flipped it open. A sharp intake of breath rippled through the crowd. Passengers leaned forward, eyes widening. A badge, FBI. The businessman's face drained of color. Marcus allowed himself a slow exhale. The FBI agent held the businessman's gaze, his voice cool and measured. Sit down. And for the first time, the man obeyed. But the moment wasn't over. Not yet. The agent took another step forward. His presence now loomed over the entire group. You seem to think respect is optional, he said, his voice carrying through the bus. But let me make something clear. It's not. The silver-haired businessman swallowed hard. For the first time, his confidence cracked. He sank into his seat, his shoulders stiff. The younger businessman beside him, the one who had mocked Marcus earlier, began to fidget. A few passengers exchanged looks, whispering. The young black girl near the middle of the bus, her eyes wide, her hands still clenched into fists, watched everything. The FBI agent's gaze didn't waver. Now, he said, let's see if you're capable of keeping your mouth shut for the rest of the ride. Silence. A long, heavy silence. And then, slowly, almost reluctantly, the bus lurched forward once more. Marcus kept his hands firm on the wheel, but this time, he let himself breathe. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't the only one standing up. The bus rumbled to a stop. Then, the doors hissed open. The air shifted. Not everyone noticed it at first. The wealthy businessmen were still grinning, still gloating. Passengers murmured. Some were still glancing at their phones, others staring uncomfortably at Marcus. Then, a single sharp gasp. A woman near the front froze, her eyes widening. The young black girl in the middle of the bus stiffened. Slowly, almost as if sensing something was off. One of the businessmen turned his head toward the doors. His smirk vanished. The color drained from his face. The other businessmen noticed the shift and followed his gaze, their expressions twisting from arrogance to sudden uncertainty. Because standing at the entrance of the bus, his presence filling the space like a storm rolling in, was Mayor Jonathan Reed, the mayor of the city. His eyes swept across the scene, taking everything in. The rigid posture of the bus driver, the tension in the air, the lingering traces of smugness on the businessmen's faces. He did not look pleased. Passengers whispered. A woman clutched her purse, leaning forward slightly. Even the FBI agent who had spoken earlier tilted his head, watching closely. Then, Mayor Reed took a step forward, and in that moment, everyone knew. Something was about to change. One of them forces a chuckle, though it sounds weak, forced. Oh, Mayor Reed, fancy seeing you here. His tone tries to carry confidence, but there's an edge to it. Just having a little fun with the driver. The words hang in the air like a bad joke no one found funny. The mayor doesn't smile. His expression darkens. His eyes are sharp, unforgiving. Is that what you call it? Passengers exchange glances. Some lean in. Others unlock their phones, record buttons blinking. The bus is filled with whispers now. The young black girl in the corner grips the edge of her seat. Her eyes are wide, fixed on Marcus, watching his every move. She isn't the only one. The mayor slowly turns toward Marcus. His movements are deliberate, controlled. His voice is measured, calm, but firm. Sir, what is your name? Marcus hesitates for only a second. Then, Marcus Hayes. A murmur spreads across the bus. The businessmen tense. The mayor nods. Mr. Hayes, I know exactly who you are. The atmosphere shifts instantly. The silver-haired businessman stiffens. The younger one grips his briefcase. Panic flickers in their eyes. The mayor folds his arms. Would you like to tell them, or should I? No response. Silence. The silver-haired businessman swallows hard. But he has no words. Mayor Reed doesn't blink. His voice, steady and sharp, cuts through the silence. Let me help you then. A heavy pause. Then, you are speaking to the head of public transit affairs. A stunned gasp ripples through the crowd. Marcus watches the men's expressions change. Doubt, shock, fear. The younger businessman flinches. The silver-haired one goes pale. The young black girl's mouth drops open slightly. One of the seated passengers lets out a low whistle. No way! The businessman with the Rolex tries to laugh it off. This, this must be a joke, right? But no one laughs. Marcus tilts his head slightly, watching them, waiting. The silver-haired businessman tries to regain control. Okay, so he has a fancy title, but he's still just a bus driver. The young girl's fists clench. The mayor doesn't flinch. You mean the man who has dedicated over 20 years to keeping this city running? His voice grows sharper. The man who ensures public transport is accessible and safe for everyone? The businessman with the Rolex opens his mouth, but the mayor doesn't let him speak. The man who has built programs that fund scholarships for underprivileged children? The man who has met with senators and governors to improve this city's infrastructure? More whispers. Phones recording. The businessmen shift, their arrogance cracking. Marcus finally speaks. His voice is calm but strong. You assumed who I was because of my job. The Rolex-wearing businessman looks trapped. We didn't mean anything by it. Marcus raises an eyebrow. Didn't you? The bus falls completely silent. For the first time, the businessmen have nothing to say. The mayor lets the moment sink in. Then, with a small but firm nod, he turns to Marcus. Sir, on behalf of this city, I apologize. Marcus gives a small nod back, but the damage is already done. Passengers whisper to each other. The businessmen stare at their hands. The young black girl? She looks at Marcus differently now, with something close to awe. For the first time in her life, she sees someone who looks like her winning. The bus rumbles forward, but the weight of the moment lingers. And the businessmen? They will never forget it. The bus is dead silent, the kind of silence that feels heavy, unbreakable. Eyes dart between Marcus and the mayor. The passengers are holding their breath. Marcus, still composed, glances at the mayor. He gives a small nod. You tell them. The mayor clears his throat. His gaze remains locked on the businessman, unblinking, sharp. Mr. Hayes is not just any bus driver. The businessmen's faces twist in confusion. Passengers shift in their seats, whispering, sensing something huge is about to drop. Mr. Hayes has worked in this city for over 2 decades, the mayor continues, ensuring safe transportation for thousands of people every single day. The businessmen exchange glances. This isn't what they expected. The silver-haired businessman forces a chuckle. That's nice, but... The mayor cuts him off. And, his voice grows sharper, he isn't just any employee. A dramatic pause. Passengers lean in. Phones are recording. The young black girl in the middle of the bus grips her seat, hanging on to every word. The businessman with the Rolex swallows. He doesn't like where this is going. The mayor's voice remains steady. Marcus Hayes is this city's longest-serving public transportation officer. A gasp ripples through the crowd. The businessmen flinch. The younger one licks his lips nervously. The mayor lets the weight of his words sink in. Then he delivers the final blow. And as of last month, his voice turns icy, he has been appointed as head of public transit affairs. A collective gasp. The passengers murmur in shock. Phones capture every moment. Marcus says nothing. He just watches their expressions change. The businessmen? Their faces go pale. The silver-haired one clutches the armrest. The younger one lowers his head. Marcus still doesn't move. The mayor's eyes burn into them. So tell me, what were you saying about people like him? A long, heavy silence. The businessmen's mouths open, but no words come out. Passengers shift. The mayor steps forward. His voice drops, but it is deadly cold. I heard you loud and clear. The silver-haired businessman stammers. Mayor, you humiliated a man you assumed was beneath you. The businessman with the Rolex wipes sweat from his brow. A woman in the back murmurs, this is unreal. The mayor continues, you saw his uniform. You saw his skin, and you thought you could treat him however you wanted. Marcus remains still. He doesn't need to say anything. The mayor is speaking the truth for him. The young black girl watches in awe. She grips her mother's arm. He's winning, Mama. The mother nods, eyes shining. Yes, baby, he is. The businessmen try to shrink in their seats, but there is nowhere to hide. A man in the back snorts. Damn, you guys really screwed up. Laughter ripples through the bus. The silver-haired businessman clenches his jaw. Look, this is getting out of hand. The mayor raises a hand. No, it's finally being handled. Passengers nod in agreement. Marcus finally speaks. Respect isn't about job titles. His voice is calm but firm. It's about character. Silence. The businessmen have nothing to say. The mayor straightens. You wanted to know if he even owned a car? A tense pause. Marcus Hayes could buy all of yours. The bus erupts in laughter. The businessmen sink further into their seats. The young black girl smiles, proud. The bus rumbles forward, but the weight of the moment lingers. And the businessmen? They will never forget it. The bus is still quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes from tension, not the kind that lingers with uncertainty. This was a different kind of quiet, the kind that comes when a lesson has been taught and learned. The businessmen quickly sit down, their faces pale, their arrogance gone. They don't speak. They don't laugh. They don't even look up. The energy around them has shifted permanently. The weight of what just happened presses down on them. They had walked onto this bus believing they were the powerful ones, that their words, their money, their status meant more than the man driving them. They thought they knew the world, but today they realized something else. They had been blind. The young black girl smiles for the first time, a small, hopeful smile. She looks at Marcus differently now, not as a bus driver, not as just another face in the city, but as a man who stood tall, who didn't break, who commanded respect without shouting. Marcus lets out a slow breath. He finally speaks, his voice calm, steady. You thought I was nobody because of my job. The businessmen flinch at his words. They don't argue. They don't defend themselves. They can't, because they know he's right. Marcus shakes his head, but there's no anger in his expression, just something far heavier. People like me, we keep this city moving. His words cut through the silence. Not loud, not forceful, just the truth. The mayor nods in agreement. Several passengers nod too. A man in the back mutters, "Damn right." The older woman near the door wipes her eyes. The young black girl straightens her posture. Marcus finally exhales and grips the wheel. The bus moves forward. The lesson has been learned. The city will never be the same again. The story explodes. Social media erupts overnight. News stations pick up the footage. The video spreads like wildfire. Headlines flood the internet. Wealthy men mock black bus driver. Regret it when the mayor walks in. City's head of transit stuns racist passengers in viral video. They judged him by his job. Now he's their boss. The footage racks up millions of views. Celebrities, politicians, and activists weigh in. The video becomes a symbol of justice. Marcus Hayes is suddenly everywhere. The businessmen? They issue public apologies. They appear on morning shows, faces full of shame. One of them wipes his forehead, nervous. We deeply regret our actions. We never meant to offend. We've learned a valuable lesson. The public? They don't buy it. The internet tears them apart. Comment sections are relentless. You weren't sorry when you said it. You're only sorry because you got caught. We don't want your words. We want change. Marcus becomes a symbol of resilience. Reporters chase him down, cameras flashing, microphones in his face. Mr. Hayes, how do you feel about all this? Marcus? He stays calm, grounded. A small smile plays on his lips. Respect isn't about money. A pause, a beat. It's about how you treat people. The world listens. The world learns. The screen fades to black.